Okay. It is Tuesday, February 11th. Luka Doncic finally makes his Lakers debut. We'll get into that. There's a rumored hiring close to happening for the Saints head coach job. We start a new segment on the show. No, I'm the idiot. This is the Early Game Podcast. Listen to the show in the mornings on your commute, whenever and wherever, so you can be a part of today's sports conversations, and let's go. Okay, so last night, the highly anticipated debut of Luka Doncic as a Los Angeles Laker went down. It was against the Utah Jazz. And there was all this build-up leading up to the game. They gave out t-shirts, 77 t-shirts. A lot of sevens in the building. Dirk Nowitzki was there. And finally, after 8 days of build-up, from one of the craziest trades in NBA history, we get to see the result. We get to see what it's going to look like for Luka Doncic to be in gold and purple. You know, early on in the game, he hits this step-back three. Everybody's going crazy. And ultimately, the Lakers go on to destroy the Utah Jazz 130-113. And we think back to why was he traded in the first place, right? They said he was out of shape. They didn't know what his future would be like with the Mavs. There was an interesting point on the broadcast, and it was the Mavs got rid of Luka. They didn't want to bet on him for their future, whereas the Lakers were the complete opposite, wanting to bet on him for their future. Again, we had a situation where a player, an athlete, a person, showed no signs of being any sort of issue. Then we get word of his team having issue with his personality, with his stature, with the athletic shape he is in. We had no idea that this was an issue before the Mavs brought it up. No one ever thought to themselves, wow, Luka Doncic is so out of shape that it's such an issue for his future. Nobody, that has never crossed anybody's mind. It had never crossed anybody's mind until that rumor dropped. And so last night, you're thinking to yourself, let's watch Luka Doncic in that context. In the context of this issue of him being out of shape, this issue of him not being able to be a future leader of a team. Let's watch this game and see if those things occur to us as we watch. And frankly, they literally, it was insane to see how that did not seem to be any issue whatsoever. He looked very in shape. Luka Doncic looked very in shape last night. Ironically, or unironically, the Lakers looked more athletic last night than they have the entire season. The way that they were able to move in transition versus how they looked with Anthony Davis was much better. It was a much better version of the Lakers last night. And yes, you add Luka Doncic, obviously you're going to be a better version of yourself, even if you're getting rid of Anthony Davis. But the athleticism, funny enough, they looked significantly more athletic in last night's game than they have in a long time. And I think, frankly, than they have possibly in the entire LeBron era, of the LeBron Lakers era. This was the most athletic they have looked. They were gliding in transition. Everybody was moving. They were obviously smaller without Anthony Davis as one of their big scoring threats and somebody that they're going to dish the ball to a lot. They were more athletic with their players, with their scorers last night than they were probably ever in the LeBron era. And the question for me becomes, what do you do now since your trade for your center fell through? So over the weekend, I didn't mention this yesterday, but the Mark Williams trade that they were supposed to have with the Charlotte Hornets fell through due to an issue with the physicals. And he was supposed to be the guy that was going to step in and be their center on this team. Last night, Jackson Hayes was their starting center. And frankly, he scored 12 points. But when your starting center has the kind of performance on the boards like he did, 2 rebounds, that's going to be an issue. That is going to be an issue. Austin Reeves led the Lakers last night with 9 rebounds. LeBron had 7. You cannot rely on that kind of rebounding from those 2 types of players later on in a playoff run. And speaking of playoff run, Lakers have the 4 seed in the West. They're still 10.5 games behind the Thunder, so they're not catching up to the Thunder. But the question is, now with Luka and LeBron together, what can this mean for them? What is the future here? What is the future here? How far can they go? And yeah, I think it remains to be seen. Look, from last night's game, they clearly have issues at center. How far can Luka and LeBron propel this team to overcome that? And how much can what I think is a much more athletic and long-term sustainable lineup, how far can they take them? And, just to wrap this up, the one thing that's really stood out to me last night, over the past couple of years, and frankly, in the last 10 years of LeBron James, none of these teams that he's played for have ever felt like they weren't run by him. Whether that was with the Cavs or the Lakers. With the Heat, it was always Eric Spoelstra's team. You always felt like he was the one in charge. It was not LeBron's team. But for the past 10 years, it sort of felt like, and the team that LeBron was playing for was LeBron's team. He ran the team. He was the GM. He was the head coach. Last night, watching that game, finally felt like this was J.J. Redick's team. This was Rob Pelinka's team. They're running the show. They're running J.J. Redick's style of play. This is not a team all entirely handpicked by LeBron. And again, if LeBron could have handpicked Luka Doncic, he would have. But there was just some dynamic, some vibe last night. I can't really even put a finger on it. That it just felt like this was J.J. Redick's team. It was his style of play. And it felt like this was the end, maybe, of LeBron-run teams. Okay, let's move on. We're going to go on to baseball here. A couple of stories in baseball. The first was, spring training, pitchers and catchers started yesterday. So we're already getting to see teams in action in spring training. It always feels like to me, the beginning of spring is the start of spring training. You see your favorite players playing in the warm weather. One of the big stories yesterday was we got a glimpse of what the MLB jerseys will look like in 2025. Last year, Nike and Fanatics changed. They changed the jerseys to these Nike Vapor Plus or whatever they are, whatever they called them. They tried getting away with no more customized pants. They probably sold them on, they'll be more comfortable, blah, 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 blah. It was a way to not make customized pants anymore. They had these jerseys, one of the big one of the points of contention, one of the things that the players couldn't stand about these jerseys last season was that anytime there was a little bit of sweat, it looked like you were drenched. These jerseys were see-through. And so they decided that they're going to go back to the old jerseys. This season, they're going to start with going back to the old gray jerseys, the road grays, and then next season it's going to be the home whites. I don't even understand that, but whatever it is. And so apparently, players are already happy with the changes. The lettering is back to normal, the numbers are back to normal, the font sizes are back to normal, and the jerseys are getting back to normal. And they also said that they came around in August to take custom pant size, so glad to hear that that's better. And frankly, those jerseys were horrible last year. Horrible. It was hard for... Honestly, it bothered me watching the game, seeing the lettering that small, seeing the jerseys look that cheap. They cheapened baseball. I'm glad that they're going back. Okay. Let's move on. So, the last domino to fall, and we've spoken about this a lot, is Alex Bregman. Where will he sign? And I think we kind of got a little bit... this was a very innocent rumor I heard that was floating around yesterday. But I think it was more significant than people made it out to be. So the rumor was that the Cubs are eyeing Justin Turner if they miss out on Alex Bregman. Look, I appreciate what the Cubs are trying to do. Try to compete. Go out and sign players who will make you better. Turner can play third, he can play first, he could be their DH. He's versatile. He's still a solid player at this point in his career. Last year he had a 1.5 WAR in among two teams that he played for, the Mariners and the Red Sox. He's still contributing. Last year he batted .259. That's a solid bat for any team to add at the end of their lineup. Like, how come other teams aren't doing this? Why haven't the Mariners re-signed him? They need bats. So many teams I could think of that need a bat are seemingly passing on him. And here's a guy who can give you production on a 1-year deal. It's frankly perplexing a guy like him is still available. The way to upgrade your team without long-term commitment is signing older players to shorter deals. And here, any team can do that with Justin Turner. Okay, he's 40. So what? How much will he fall off from his 1.5 WAR from last season? And how much will he cost? This is so good for the Cubs. They're in on Alex Bregman, and they have a really solid backup plan. This is the only team in the NL Central to actually upgrade this offseason. They will win the NL Central. Mark my words. All you Cub fans out there, they will win the NL Central. Not the Pirates, not the Cardinals, and not the Brewers. The Chicago Cubs will win the NL Central. That's an early teaser at my preseason picks. Those will come in about a month. Okay, one last baseball story here. Kike Hernandez, he's returning to the Dodgers. That's on a 1-year deal. Clayton Kershaw is that last infinity stone for the Dodgers, for them to get the whole gang back together. My question is, at a certain point, does it not get too crowded? I get that you need pitching. Let's just talk about Kershaw for a second here. He didn't sign, but when they inevitably sign him, they're going to have 7 starting pitchers that are going to want to be starters. So are they going to go with a 7-man rotation? Who's the odd man out? And is Kike Hernandez, is he going to play? What's his status? I guess they have Jake Outman, they have Kike, they have Teoscar Hernandez, Mookie Betts. They say he's going to play the infield. Is he? Didn't they sign that guy, Hai-Sung Kim? So where does everyone factor in here? There's only so many starting spots. The Dodgers can't, they only have 9 spots in their lineup, 5 rotation spots. Can't play all these guys every night. It'll be interesting. Look, they're banking on injuries, which is fine. But what do you do in the interim when those injuries haven't happened yet? Are you counting on the injuries happening in spring training? It's why if you want to look at the bright side, or not a bright side, but silver lining. Silver lining is not even the right word. Following a team like the Mets so closely, last season, what I loved is their versatility. They had a lot of guys competing for spots, and you took the best one, and then you had a lot of nice depth. And the Dodgers obviously have incredible depth, better depth than, and when they add Clayton Kershaw, will be the best depth in baseball. Their depth pieces will be better far and away than any other team. But the question is, what do you do with those guys until it's time for them to play? And that can fester into an issue. It could become an issue of how do these guys feel sitting around not playing? Okay, let's move on. So, we spoke yesterday about the Four Nations NHL tournament. And every second that passes by, I get more excited for this thing. Yesterday, teams began practicing. We got to see, the players travel from their teams, their actual teams, to go and participate in practices with their teammates for the next 10 days. So, by the way, this tournament goes from February 12th to the 20th. So it expands over 8 days. It's in Montreal and Boston, and I spoke about how host cities, they're looking to make revenue. And here, they're adding a host city. So 2 cities now, this year, get to put on this event. It's a round robin in the first round, so each team will play each other, and the 2 best records play in the championship. The first 4 games will be Montreal, then the last 3 and including the championship, will be in Boston. I am so excited for this. I think this is brilliant. And thinking about the NBA and their issues with their All-Star games and their in-season tournament, scrap the in-season tournament. Do something like this instead. This is, I think, the blueprint for the future of the NHL, and it's what the NBA should be doing too. This is brilliant. I haven't even seen the product yet. I'm so excited for this thing to start. This is better than any sort of All-Star game hockey could have put on. I am so excited to watch this event being put on by the NHL. And we'll cover it closely here on Early Game. Okay, let's move on to football. So it's speculated that Kellen Moore is going to be the next head coach of the New Orleans Saints. He just won Super Bowl as the offensive coordinator for the Eagles in New Orleans, which is kind of cool. Just won, I'm sure in his introductory press conference, if this goes through, that will be, a big motivational point by him. He was a quarterback for the Cowboys in 2015, played 3 games. He had a 23 quarterback rating, not too great. He was the offensive coordinator for Dallas for 4 seasons, then the Chargers offensive coordinator for a season, and obviously most recently with the Eagles. Look, he had Dak, Justin Herbert, and Jalen Hurts. And the elephant in the room here is, what is he going to have with the Saints? The current situation is Derek Carr and Spencer Rattler. The report yesterday was that Cliff Kingsbury could have had the Saints job if he wanted it, but he was much happier sticking with the Commanders and Jaden Daniels. And you have to think, if Cliff Kingsbury's worried about the Saints job, if you're Kellen Moore, you should be worried. You don't have a obvious choice here at who your quarterback will be. It's tough in a draft that does not have a lot of quarterbacks available. This is going to be tough. This is going to be a tough job. And frankly, he is not going to win early on in his career as Saints head coach. He just won't. And if he does, he's going to be the greatest head coach of all time. This is going to be a tough job. and is not going to be a one-year flip rebuild. He is going to have to not be good for a couple of years. It feels like every day we're talking about teams that need quarterbacks, and every day we're searching for quarterbacks for those teams. There is much more demand than there is supply in this quarterback market. Okay, let's finish off with the new segment on Early Game. As this show is growing, as the YouTube grows, as the Spotify grows, as the X grows, I start to get a couple more comments. And I figured I should be responding to these comments, make it interactive with the audience. And so, something I always, I'll always say when I'm in an argument, and I'll always kind of give this feeling is, I'm the one that's wrong. Oh, no, I'm the one that's wrong. Because I know I'm so right. I say, no, I'm the idiot. And so, I know I'm so right in what this commenter said. I wanted to say to him, no, I'm the idiot. No, I'm the idiot. And that's the name of our new segment. No, I'm the idiot. So, let's get to this. This was a YouTube comment. Yesterday, I uploaded a short to YouTube on Saquon Barkley's performance in the Super Bowl. And it was about how I said he was a non-factor. Cameron Brissett 4080, who seemingly is an Eagles fan, took issue with this. Non-factor with 1,000 question marks? The man has 16 eyes on him at all times, no matter what formation. Terrible take. The whole KC's defensive game plan was to stop him, which is a huge factor, LOL. It lets the rest of the team be successful, man. Understand football before saying blasphemy. Buddy, he was a non-factor. He did not produce. I understand that was Kansas City's game plan. But when you're a star player, you must defy what other teams are preparing for you. My point was about Kansas City being so one-dimensional that they were only able to stop the run. Spagnuolo was so focused on Saquon. Was so focused on the run game. That was the point I was trying to make. Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown took advantage. They were the factors in that game. Those three were the factors. Saquon, the Kansas City made him a non-factor. It didn't matter that they made him a non-factor. So here you are, an Eagles fan, getting all sour the day after you won a freaking Super Bowl that I called Saquon a non-factor. Okay, so he should have won Super Bowl MVP then if he was the biggest factor, if he was such a huge factor. Give Jalen Hurts credit. Give the offensive line credit. Hurts had time to throw to Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, and he got it done. And honestly, there were some times in that game, it felt like, I'm going to say it, felt like Saquon had some holes that he could run through, and he couldn't. Yeah, I'll say it. I thought even as good of a game plan as Kansas City had, Saquon should have been better. Going to start up with me like that. He was a non-factor. He did not produce. Give credit to the actual factors in that game. The actual factors were the Eagles' defense, Jalen Hurts, their offensive line, Devontae Smith, and A.J. Brown. Those were the reasons why they won the Super Bowl. That is the reason why they were the reasons why they won that game. Don't give me all this BS that you feel so sour about me calling Saquon a non-factor. He was the best non-quarterback all season and in the playoffs. He still was. Kansas City had to do something about that, and they did. They shut him down. All they could talk about on the broadcast was how Saquon could not get going. Jeez, why is that what's offending you? Is that I call Saquon a non-factor? You won the Super Bowl, for crying out loud. See, I like that segment. Gets me a little heated early on in the morning. Okay, that's a show. We'll see whatever happens in sports tonight. That'll be talked about tomorrow. Make sure you're following on Spotify, following on X, like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Have a wonderful day.